Sex workers of Reddit, what is the saddest experience, client-wise, you've had while on the job? Dancer here. I've had a bunch of clients that would take me to a booth and then just start crying. I feel bad for them, but I do my best to console them, and I never rip off customers. However, one night this guy came in with about $5,000 to $10,000 in cash. I don't know exactly how much. A few girls approached him but left quickly. I went to talk to him, and he wanted to go for a dance, but needed help walking and stuff as he was very old. We got to the booth and he started talking about his deceased wife who died while she was pregnant and how he wished she was there and can I find a fat dancer instead so he could pretend it's his pregnant dead wife. Kinda weird, but I happen to work in childcare, so I told him that and asked if he'd like to hear stories of the children I take care of. He said yes, and so I told him different cute stories of children I take care of. He took out a huge wad of $100s and set it down on the little table next to the couch. I was going to spend the entire night with him and only charge what I earned per hour, which would have been plenty anyway. However, a few other dancers noticed the money, so they bribed the bouncer to kick me out on a fake account of letting the guy touch my pussy, and then the bouncer stole the stack from the guy saying he broke the rules and split the cash with the two dancers. I never worked there again. I've worked as a dominatrix and as an escort, and my saddest experience was one of my submissives. I saw this client a few times. He was morbidly obese but very intelligent, funny and had a successful career. He was heavily into receiving pain and our sessions were on the more extreme end. Afterwards he'd want to cuddle and chat and laugh. One day, after our session, he told me he was finally retiring and going to solo travel and have some experiences. Not long after, a coworker who was a friend of him outside of work told me he had passed away. Based on the timeline, I doubt he ended up vacationing. I've had other clients who were depressed, in bad marriages, or unhappy with their lives, but he was the only client that I'd known to have passed away, and under such sad circumstances. A husband and wife booked me for a threesome because having a lesbian experience was on her bucket list. She'd recently recovered from a double mastectomy and had just been diagnosed with a terminal brain tumor despite undergoing chemotherapy. In a private, fully clothed moment between the husband and I, he told me she doesn't have long left, and the way they looked at each other was so beautiful. Just pure love. Had a client who didn't speak much English. Afterwards we were lying down together. I got out my phone and we had a conversation via Google Translate. He told me that his wife had died 4 months earlier and that this was the first time he'd felt normal since. I was a dancer in college for girls and gay clubs. Never did anything private, but would sit with generous customers. Most of the time I just tuned out whatever they were saying. Had one older guy that always wanted to talk and always said I reminded him of his ex-boyfriend. I'm straight and honestly probably not the nicest dancer in the club, but he wasn't creepy. He brought in a bunch of photos of him with his BF that were around 30 years old and the guy looked like he could be my brother. The patron had married a woman, had a family, and lived a straight life in public. His wife had left him, and his kids wanted nothing to do with him. All he ever did was talk about his BF that had died shortly after he was married. He was so full of regret for not spending time with his BF. It was just painful. He never proposed anything else, was always super respectful and generous. I genuinely felt bad for the guy. He had a spinal injury and was basically trapped in his body. Could barely speak and move. His mother booked me. I was told I'm going to be the last person he had sex with, since he was planning on euthanasia later that year. We held each other and cried afterwards. When I left his room, his mother hugged me and cried. I couldn't accept payment for that one. She sent me a diamond necklace a week later with a note saying he'd passed. A guy literally crying about how lonely he was. We didn't even have sex. He just wanted to hang out. He was a really nice guy, but I had to cut off contact after that one encounter because he had the idea that he was going to save me from drugs and prostitution and wife me up or something. I felt horrible. I used to be a sex camp worker. I had a regular client who always paid for private time with me. Nothing really did anything sexual for him. He wanted me to dress as a happy housewife and tell him what would be for dinner. How are the 2 dogs and cat, imaginary, doing? What'll were their names? He would tell me we lived in Italy, I forgot where, but he described to me a large house with a pool and all. He pretty much would just fantasy play house with me. I would get really into it, and he would always visit me every day. He was just a very lonely man, and seemed to crave for some human affection and interaction. I felt bad when I just dropped out of the job without warning. I do think about him from time to time. I hope he managed to live his best life. The client wanted to fix her bisexual husband and thought that hiring a transgender man for BDSM stuff would show him how to be straight again or something like that. It was cringy all around. On the bright side, they're divorced now, and I introduced him to a guy from my D&D group. Not me, but a friend had a pretty young client, mid-30s, whose wife had terminal cancer and physically could not have sex with her husband anymore. The wife was present for all of their meetings and was in the room when they had sex, and my friend told me that it was clear they both loved each other and had decided together to find a way to meet his sexual needs without him resorting to cheating or secrecy. My first day stripping, a dude took me upstairs for dances, and when I started dancing he abruptly was like, "Stop, I just want to hug you." So I sat next to him, and he hugged me for 5 songs straight. It was the most awkward ***T. I just kinda patted him on the back the whole time. This is late, so we'll probably get buried, but boy, this one has stuck with me for years. My first year as a stripper, I worked Valentine's Day. A guy came in and asked me to sit with him. He specifically told me he didn't want me to take off any clothes at first. He just wanted me to sit with him. We had a couple of drinks and a snack, and he kept paying me every 20 or so minutes to keep sitting with him. Eventually he asked me to sit on his lap, then purr like a cat with my head against his chest. Little weird, but very innocent in the scheme of things. After maybe an hour of sitting with him, he started to open up and talked about how he was 40 years old. He'd never had a girlfriend, and he didn't think he'd ever get one. He showed me pictures of him cosplaying, and we had a really nice conversation. I felt terrible for him because he seemed like a really nice guy, but at 23 years old with no real relationship success under my belt, I didn't really think I was in a position to give him advice on his love life. He was a larger guy and maybe a little shy, but he was a good conversationalist, funny, he didn't smell bad or anything like that, and I just felt so bad that he considered himself incapable of finding love. He ended up paying me $1,000 for spending a couple of hours with him, which was the biggest payday I'd seen at the time. I never saw him again, but I hope he's doing great and is happier now, whether that includes a girlfriend or not. Ahem. A friend of mine who was a sex worker had a client who had tons of scars on his abdomen. Turns out he was terminally ill and planned to ride his motorcycle around the country until he couldn't anymore. Make sure to like and subscribe for more daily content. Thanks for watching.